Hello friends, here we are at the fourth and final section in our look at 1 Corinthians chapter 7, and in this video we're covering verses 25 through to the end, verse 40. So I'd encourage you to read these verses and then I'll make some comments about them. So read 1 Corinthians chapter 7 verses 25 to 40. Pause the video and then come back to me. How did you get on? Okay, so what do we have in this section? Well, having written of marriage and divorce and sexual relationships, Paul has argued thus far that those who are married should strive to remain married, and those who are unmarried should not normally feel that they need to seek marriage. Neither the married nor unmarried states are of any spiritual advantage or disadvantage. In this section, verses 25 to 40, Paul addresses advantages of remaining unmarried, writing mainly with specific reference to those who never have been married. And though the advantages of being single are considerable, including the ability to be more committed to the affairs of the Lord, this does not mean that marriage is wrong. In the last two verses, Paul returns to talk of a widow who, though free to marry, may feel more blessed if she remains as she is. Paul's goal is that each person should understand that undivided devotion to the Lord, as he says in verse 35, check down at verse 35, undivided devotion to the Lord should guide these decisions about relationships with other people, and that such a stance benefits the whole church. And so let me share my screen and show you the very simple structure of this section. It's really very simple and straightforward, or at least as I present it anyway. So Paul now writes in verses 25 to 40 about the benefits of remaining unmarried. The change of topic is introduced in verse 25 by another use of his famous "now concerning" phrases. And the first section, verses 25 to 38, examine matters related to the unmarried. And that can be divided into three sections, to be honest. Verses 25 to 31, Paul presents the matter of what it means to live in the end times, end time living, referring to the present distress and the fact that the present world is passing away. And this context for life, in a sense, relativizes questions both of marriage and singleness. All things are passing away. Secondly, in verses 32 to 35, Paul speaks of the great value of the undivided commitment both unmarried men and women can offer to the Lord. And then in verses 36 to 38, Paul then addresses betrothed men and urges marriage if they are finding it unduly hard to control their sexual desires. So that's the first section, matters related to the unmarried. And then finally, just in two verses at the end there, matters related to widows. In a very short section, Paul addresses comments towards widows and about widows. And the whole section here, the whole section continues the theme that we've seen in the earlier part of the chapter and in the previous videos about remaining as you are. Did you hear that phrase multiple times in these verses? Verses 26 and 27, remain as you are. Verses 37 and 38, remain as you are. Verse 40, remain as you are. And so, how do we summarize these concluding verses in chapter 7? Well, undivided devotion to the Lord should guide our decisions about whether to remain single or whether to marry. And this, in a sense, is a principle that we should apply to all aspects of life, remembering that generally this whole book is about the Apostle Paul applying the gospel to every aspect of life. And here in chapter 7, he does so and demonstrates what that means in addressing issues to do with relationships. So there you go, chapter 7, perhaps controversial, perhaps very straightforward. I wonder how you have heard this chapter. Well, do continue to think about it and always seek to apply the gospel principle of devotion to the Lord in all the decisions that you have to make. Well, thanks for your time. I hope this has been of interest to you. I look forward to seeing you again, perhaps for the next set of studies in 1 Corinthians, when we dive into chapter 8 onwards. Until then, do take care and God bless. Bye-bye.